Hey guys, it's Ken. Welcome to another Autism Digest interview, where today we have someone who I'm very excited to talk to. He is the brother of the late great comedian Chris Farley, who I had the pleasure of being exposed to during my teenage years, and he is the outreach director at recovery.com, a nonprofit organization that helps people struggling with addiction look for providers. He is Tom Farley. Thanks for coming on, Tom.
Hey, great to be here. So excited that we have this chance to talk. And yeah, you say that you were exposed to Chris, from entertainment side, but I actually had to share a bedroom with him. So, my exposure was a little bit more intense, but it certainly made it life interesting growing up with Chris. That's for sure.
It definitely sounds like it was interesting. How, hey, my first question for you is: I think a lot of people recognize the Farley name. You guys are comedy royalty. But for those that may not know you, do you mind telling a bit of your story in your own words?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. And having said that, uh yeah, I'll say that, you're also talking to probably the least funny in the Farley family, but I'm pretty funny. But yeah, we grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was the oldest of we have an older sister, Barb, but four boys. I was the oldest. Chris was right came right after me, and I just went through life, went to college out east at Georgetown and was gonna have a corporate career. And, then Chris, right after me said, "Oh, I want to go into, I want to be an actor." I'm like, I didn't know that was an option, but so he did that. It was fun to watch him do that, but I was on a different trajectory. And until, the event, when Chris died, and I just knew I had to go out and talk about it. And so that really was the beginning of a change for me when I went into schools talking about addiction prevention and now even in recovery. And during that time, telling Chris's story and telling somebody else's, journey, I'm sure I helped people, and I did some interesting things in Chris's name, but I was still kind of not in a good place either and then about 7 years ago, I got into recovery myself and started telling my story. And that's when I started getting all the connection and all the things I wanted in life. And so I took this beginning of a career working out in New York as a marketing PR professional and applied it to, this the world of addiction and recovery and got into recovery myself. And now I'm at this startup here in our hometown of Madison, Wisconsin called recovery.com, which, as you said, does match people to the right treatment. Finding the right treatment, finding treatment is hard as it is. Finding the right treatment is even harder for everyone's got a different issue they're dealing with. And so, particularly as we're going to talk about, marginalized communities or neurodivergent or whatever it is, that's even 10 times harder. So we're trying to make those barriers easier. But the thing was, finding treatment is just a small portion of, what recovery.com does is we also provide all these resources on how to understand addiction, understand some of the treatments that are out there, hear other people's stories. And that's where I, do most of my work because I really love uh, getting our message out there, letting people know that uh, recovery and healing and all that stuff is possible. And if you're experiencing barriers, then let's help you through those. And so that's where I am now here at recovery.com, just, you know, trying to get people into treatment if they need it, but certainly in this world of recovery, where I find myself too.
And that's an admirable mission. I know, speaking from experience, I come from a family of addicts, and That's a cause that still, just like neurodiversity, is commonly misunderstood in our society. Yeah.
Yes.
One notable thing people say is just don't drink or smoke and you're good to go. Oh, and that's not really how it works. It's an illness that needs proper help, which leads to my next question for you. Do you have any experiences interacting with the autism or neurodivergent community that you want to talk about?
Yes. And not a, you know, I didn't know, you know, first of all, like we we didn't even see that in Chris. We used to make fun of how he would need to tap certain things, and before he engaged in whatever activity or communicating, he had these routines, and we were just like, what are you doing? Not knowing anything about OCD, and not know, and he was never really even diagnosed with that. And so I reflect back on that. Just when I started to look into my own uh um what caused some of the drinking and stuff like that, the way I'm wired, and then finally gotten diagnosed as you know ADHD, and understanding that about myself. I started to see um you know that as I said, starting to see Chris differently, starting to see myself differently. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to look at other people all, in that same way, because really part of my recovery is this need to connect, and this need to feel that I belong. And once I realized that that was, what I needed, I started seeing that like in others, like, oh, not only does that person need connection and a sense of belonging, but you know what? I want to be part of that. I want to be connected to that person. I'm curious and interested, and I need that connection. And I went from this common position like that, of othering people, to this belief that no, it's our otherness that makes it life so interesting. And I want to collect people in my life that have those really interesting ways and of thinking and talking and whatever it is. I'm like, that's what makes life interesting. And I've found that the more I welcome others into my life with all of their, otherness, I give myself the same grace, and they're welcoming me and for the same reason. And I have the most amazing connections now because of that mindset. And but connection is one thing, but when you connect it to the other part of what I do is finding treatment. It all is that's hard, and I happen to have also a daughter who has a physical disability, and so she's in a marginalized group all her own, but she also has a neurodivergent kind of diagnosis as well. But when she had to go into treatment, the barriers were unbelievable. Not just the physical barriers, but just the understanding of they were treating her addiction and her eating disorder, like it was, like a common thing. Everyone, has the same diagnosis. Uh, so and it didn't work for her. It was like it was hard. And I'm like, all right, the treatment field really needs to pay attention to this, and meet people. We love to say meet people where they are, but we're not doing it.
I absolutely agree with that. As I said, neurodiversity and addiction, despite a lot of people going through that, are still misunderstood in our society. So I think, like you were saying, if we focus more on connection and empathy, we'll understand them now more than ever, or especially given how much they're in the news now. Going to comedy for a bit, my next question for you is, how can comedy spaces become more inclusive and supporting of neurodivergent performers, writers, and creatives?
I think, well, first of all, I come in, or I watch my brothers come into the the comedy world through not stand-up comedy, but through improv. And I watch them. Improv is based on, ensembles. It's the group. It's based on acceptance and trust and uh, and always trying to move forward. And no matter what somebody says, uh, um, accept that and send the message that not only did I hear you, but I'm gonna take what you said and I'm gonna build on it. I'm gonna build on what you started. And so I started going into schools, uh, with the intent to talk about substance abuse, but I'm like, how do I do that? And I looked at my brothers with their improv, and I started to teach improv as a means to connect and a means to create ensembles where everyone's different, but that makes the ensemble just so much stronger. And so I that concept of ensemble and welcoming, trusting environments, accepting, I think that uh, mindset, that positive mindset, I think um, start there. And not only that, but and I use this quote a lot talking about comedy. We used in my family comedy uh, primarily as a coping mechanism because we didn't want to deal with some of the heavier emotions and issues. So everything was funny to us. And the plus side is we got really good at it, and all my brothers made careers out of it. But it also was a trauma that we weren't able to develop these other emotions. And and so I, as I said, I like that. Well, I was going to say one of the quotes I like to use from Maya Angelou, who said that only equals can laugh at each other, can laugh together. If there's a disconnect, if you're laughing at somebody else or laughing at yourself, um, that's not really comedy. You're there's no joy in that. But when two people are connected and laughing together, and there isn't an imbalance in power or whatever it is, that's where you start seeing the joy come into comedy. And I think we see that in comedy a lot, especially self-depreciating. My brother Chris, particularly, was very self-depreciating with his weight, and I think that it was funny to on the external side, but I think it had a heavy toll on the inside for him because he wasn't fully accepted and didn't feel a sense of belonging, and so I think. Um, I think that you have to really be, conscious of that. And I think there's some great comics out there that use their, you know, physical disabilities or their neurodiversity as part of their act. But I think, if it masks something, not only does it is not helping that person, but it also perpetuates the stigma. And I think if you do it the right way, and there's some people that do it masterfully, uh, it really it makes this important message, I think, palatable to people. Uh, when somebody's really funny, uh, and they're doing it and showing, all of themselves in their humor, I think people, you know, people aren't fearful anymore of that person, and humor can be that connector. And I love to see more of that.
I absolutely agree with that. I definitely loved how you mentioned and that comedy was used as a coping mechanism in your family. I've seen a couple of interviews that you and your brothers have done that mention that, and I'll admit I'm guilty of that too. When I was first learning about autism as a teenager, I would often use humor and self deprecation as a coping mechanism because, at one, I misunderstood it had my age, and at two, I thought it was something horrible that was a curse, and I felt sorry for myself. But the more I learned about it, and the more I've done work in the autism community, the more I've learned that certain aspects of life are important to talk about. Certain things people are going through are incredibly important to talk about. So I definitely
Yeah.
love.
Yeah, using humor to deaden the pain of isolation is just as damaging and deadly as using alcohol and substances to deaden the pain of isolation, which is what a lot of people do. And what people, the focus on addiction is that's what it is you're trying to deaden this pain of isolation. And but we do the same thing with humor sometimes too. It helps us feel a little less isolated for the time being, but it doesn't last long. That pain and that hurt and that feeling of loneliness is still there.
Exactly. Exactly. Which leads to my next question. Going back to addiction for a bit, what unique challenges do neurodivergent individuals face when navigating addiction or substance misuse?
Well, I mean, as I said, the, everyone's looking for connection, and I think, you know, Uh, one of the problems, I think, in any marginalized group that's looking for connection is the first place you think you found connection is with other marginalized people, and now you've got this group of people that have been marginalized for whatever reason, and they're trying to deal with that, the pain of what they're experiencing and even though they're together, they're doing it in unsafe and unhealthy ways, because a for a small for it does work for a little, it's an escape, but it also is very it's an accepted way to do that in our society, you know, to take these uh you know drugs and alcohol, and then when it becomes an issue, then they point to you and said, "Well, that's your problem. You couldn't handle that." But so you take that, and that is the problem with you know a lack of diversity, and it is when marginalized groups are continue to be marginalized and feel like isolated and alone and no belonging, and they engage in these risky behaviors. It's because what they really want is to be part of the human, be part of the human condition, with everyone else, and they're not allowed to do that. And I think that's the first thing is look around. It's like, is everyone in your group kind of dealing with the same issues? Then you're all isolating together. Find, diversity, the connection that includes diversity, uh, and I think that goes for both sides. You know, I think if you're surrounding yourself with people that, are masking, to look like, you're normal, that's a dangerous place too. It, in both cases, you're not allowed to be your authentic self.
I absolutely agree. That happens a lot in our society with bullying, not just due to neurodiversity, but due to race, color, and insecurity. I think it goes back to what you're saying. We need connection, and that's why platforms like that exist, so we can spotlight these stories and make those connections. So
And
we
I do love that not just comedy, but also other parts of entertainment are showcasing. One of the things we do in recovery is to show that just because I don't drink or take drugs anymore, that doesn't mean I'm not having fun. I mean, one of the myths in recovery is you're not going to have friends, you're not going to have any fun anymore. And the first thing that dawned on me was like, you're not going to tell Farley he's not going to have fun. Like that doesn't make sense. Of course I'm going to have fun. And so I look for these, ways that I can do that. It has nothing to do with drinking. I value fun. And now we're seeing that in other parts of entertainment, as you've mentioned on some of your other shows before, from Big Bang to Jimmy Neutron to, as you just had that great conversation, to even Stranger Things. Is showcasing, what it's like to be part of a like really fun, interesting group, and everyone's they're not all the same, kind of walking the same kind of journey. They're beautiful ensembles that hopefully are showing people like for me, I want to be sitting in that living room or in that basement, playing, or maybe not playing Dungeons and Dragons, but watching them. I mean, because I don't know what's going on, but it looks really cool.
Dungeons and Dragons is cool. I
Yeah.
haven't played it either, but it's definitely a cool game. And I agree, that's a very common misconception. And going back to my own personal experiences dealing with a family of addicts, my stepmom, back when she was around my age, used to go for rats and parties and what have you. Ooh, and see, that was her definition of fun. Now, oh, as someone in recovery, her definition of fun is baking sourdough bread and working out, and that's okay. Hey, I personally find have fun too cooking, and
Well, what's fun is being understanding who your authentic self is and being able to live with that person and enjoy that person and who you are. Like when I started to find that, there's an anecdote I used to tell about myself in my most of my journey, and I think it was true for my brother Chris too, is we could be in the middle of a room, surrounded by people, center of attention, making everyone laugh, and yet not feel more like we're standing on the surface of the moon. It's like I'm giving everyone all the stuff that they want, or that I thought they want from me. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so alone? I got people everywhere. People would die for my ability to make everyone around me laugh. But why do I feel this way? Because they're not seeing the real me. They're not seeing who I truly am, and that was a horrible feeling. The only way I knew how to deal with that was to drown it, numb it. And now, I just said like, here's my authentic self. you know, you either accept that and show me that you value that, and show me a sense, that I'm being welcomed in, and with this sense of belonging, or not. And I won't give you anything other than that anymore. I'm not going to perform for you anymore. I'm going to be my authentic self, like it or leave it, because I like it. I'm good with it.
that's a great way to approach life. I definitely admire that. People can either be accepting or empathetic towards a situation, or they can expect you to perform like a zoo animal and live a particular way. And
And once you start modeling that, then the fear, people stop fearing you, start accepting you, and all of a sudden, you, you know, this connection that you always wanted, people are coming to you, and you know, you're modeling that behavior. All of a sudden, they're being a little bit more authentic around you as well, and people appreciate that so much. And all of a sudden, you see people around you, uh, trying to do what you're doing, you know,
Exactly.
and
Exactly. It's that simple.
yeah.
Anyways, that's going to do for this interview, guys. Thanks so much to Tom for coming on and sharing his extremely powerful perspectives. If you guys want to see more amazing interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Be on the lookout for our next issue that comes out next month. You can get that by going to autismdigest.com. And stay tuned for the audio file of this interview to be posted on our Spotify. It's been a while since I posted one, but we'll be getting back to that soon. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.